Wow. The NASCAR silly season is getting crazy. With the announcement just today, I'm making this right about 8 o'clock on Tuesday, August 13th, that Juan Pablo Montoya will not return to Chip Ganassi Racing in 2014. To me, this is a major surprise. This is the driver that has the longest tenure with Ganassi, and it does not include just stock cars. Montoya won the Indy 500 driving for Chip Ganassi. I believe I'm right on that. He's run sports cars for Ganassi. Total shock. Which leads to the question, who will go in the 42 car next year? I'll get to that here in a minute. First, the worst kept secret of silly season, there was known before the start of the year, if not toward the end of last year, that Kevin Harvick would not return to Richard Childress Racing and would move over to his good friend Tony Stewart at Stewart-Haas Racing. By the way, Tony continues to recover. Best wishes for a speedy recovery, Tony. But that was a known fact. Other players may not be where they are is, of course, Ryan Newman, who has been told he will not return to Stewart-Haas Racing. But there's actually been a rumor circulating, and I don't know if this is true or not. I heard this from a friend who heard it from a friend, okay? That Ryan Newman has some sponsorship, and if they can get more, there's even a possibility of the fourth car at Stewart-Haas. I know that's far-fetched, but drivers right now without contracts for next year that are Cup drivers are Kurt Busch, currently in the 78 Furniture Row car. Now, that car is fully sponsored. The owner sponsors it. Kurt Busch would probably do best thing he could do. I mean, they're threatening to become the first single car team in the history of the chase to even make the chase. Maybe I think he ought to stay there. Ryan Newman is looking for a ride. Now this and Montoya, that leaves two rides open, which is the 42 car vacated by Newman and the 29 car, the Richard Childress Racing car, vacated by Kevin Harvick. A lot of people think Austin Dillon's coming up, although I have seen printed reports that Newman may be going to Childress. Remember, Budweiser and I think Jimmy John's, I read on Jayski, is going. And if you want the real update on silly season, read www.jayski.com, jayski.com. But Ryan Newman has some sponsorship. Quicken Loans loves him. Outback may go with him, even Aspen Dental. Now, for the 42 car, I heard a name mentioned, and this was by Felix Sabates, who is a co-owner with Chip Ganassi, of Kyle Larson. This is a bad idea. Kyle Larson very well may be in Cup one day, but I don't think he's ready. And if you're going to go into Cup, you have to be committed to Cup. And my beef with Kyle Larson is he left Watkins Glen practice, very little road course experience, to go run the Knoxville Nationals. He left practice early. No. Kyle Larson, if you want to stay in open wheel, stay in open wheel and get out of stock cars. But with so little road course experience that I know of, especially in a nationwide type car. But to me, Ryan Newman to Ganassi would make sense. I mean, the reason I said Ganassi is loyal to drivers, after McMurray left Roush, he brought him back. He's the one that brought McMurray into Cup originally, back in 2002 when he filled in and won a race for the injured Sterling Marlin. But Ryan Newman to Ganassi. You got to remember, Ganassi switched to Hendrick equipment this year. Ryan Newman's been running Hendrick equipment last few years since the start of Stewart-Haas Racing, so maybe a good fit. A lot of people think Austin Dillon's coming up, whether he's ready, who knows. I don't see Juan Pablo Montoya going to Richard Childress. I maybe see him not even coming back in NASCAR, trying to go back into sports cars, even getting an IndyCar ride, somewhere along that line. I mean, maybe go back to sports cars and drive for Ganassi's in that too, drive for a competitor to Ganassi, but that is kind of Montoya's background. He could even go back to, he's won in Formula One. He could even go back to Formula One, but, and I will say this about Kevin Harvick in closing. He's not the first driver to go in the season as a lame duck driver. Casey Kane, just a few years ago before joining Hendrick, with Rick Hendrick's blessing, Mr. H's blessing, drove 1 year for Red Bull. Back in the 80s, Neil Bonnet had signed with Junior Johnson, but due to contractual obligations, get this, they couldn't run a second car for another year. And get this, Mountain Dew, then Pepsi was a sponsor, and that's who forbade a second car. Went to the Raymock team, which no longer exists. And the other, where you could have a lame duck driver, if a driver, Rusty Wallace, a few years ago at Penske, was retiring. Of course, there's no problem with that. I mean, and I'm not trying to start a rumor. If Jeff Gordon would announce next year's his last year, and by no means is this a rumor, as I've heard this, I'm sure, yes, technically he'd be a lame duck driver, but he wouldn't be treated as such. I know the driver, in my opinion, that was treated terrible as a lame duck driver was Dale Earnhardt Jr. with a company formerly known as DEI. He got nothing but junk promoters. And I still refer to his ex-stepmother as Teresa Houston. I will not disgrace the Earnhardt name by using it with that woman. Just my take.